there, today we are looking at the Axis Pro from Zeapon. Now, this slider has a motorized panning and a motorized tilt head, which kind of allows you to create more complex and more dynamic shots. You can still use this as a normal slider with just the pan head, but the motorized tilt is what turns this into kind of a poor man's Cine Bot. The Axis 80 Pro is one of 3 available lengths. All models comes with a carrying case, support arms, and a spare belt. They even include a little screwdriver and a printed manual for those of you that enjoy that type of literature. But I want to say there's really no point in doing any deep dives into the manual because everything is well labeled, well thought out. You will probably get the hang of almost everything within a couple of minutes. Now, this slider has been on the market for a couple of months, and that means there's a lot of reviews and a lot of comments on YouTube already. So I wanted to take just a few minutes later on in this video to address some things that Zeapon seems to have fixed or improved, like the sturdiness of this particular arm or the joint, and other things that I've seen mentioned in the comment sections on some of these earlier reviews. No shade on anyone, obviously, but there's a few things and a couple of workarounds that I think it might have been overlooked or things that might have been fixed since the initial release of this product. Now, the most unique part of this slider is obviously the motorized tilt, but let's spend just a few moments on some of the other features that I think stands out or things that kind of showcase the overall quality of this product. So the first thing I wanted to bring up is the support points and mounting points. These mounting points provides plenty of clearance, especially when you compare them to some of the other sliders that I have in my now slider collection here in the studio, and that's just one thing that I really like about these sliders. The 80 Pro has 3 of these mounting or support points, while the longer versions has a total of 6. Maybe this ain't the sexiest feature to kind of highlight, but I think a lot of people, especially beginners, kind of underestimate the importance of keeping your slider absolutely steady to avoid any shakes or any positional mismatches when you're doing things like overlaying multiple takes. Sometimes it might be the slider that has just a tiny bit of flex or maybe a lot of flex. Other times it might be the tripod head or the tripod legs that have just enough give to shift around the position of your camera ever so slightly. And when you think about it, if you've ever looked into a professional photographer studio, they often use these super heavy pillar stands instead of tripods just to avoid any shakes. And you and I are probably gonna slap this onto some sort of pretty affordable video tripod and have a couple of kilos of weight shift around and move around like this. So that's why I see a lot of people having issues with jitters, shakes, and that kind of stuff in their slider footage. This obviously along with using improper frame rates and running your slider too fast. It's all part of the kind of learning curve when you first start using a slider. The release latch is another feature that I think is worth mentioning. I really like this feature, by the way. It kind of lets you disengage from the belt and move the slider into position manually. It's much quicker and easier if you're just trying to frame up a shot, to be able to move things around, to kind of estimate and guess your start and stop points and that kind of stuff. Some sliders won't allow you to move the carriage at all once you have the motor and everything powered up. Some will let you do that, but usually with a great bit of resistance. So here you can just unlock the belt and you can move things around really nice and easily. And by the way, I will only cover the video features and functions in this review or whatever you want to call this. But if you're a photographer, there's a remote port under this little flap and a whole bunch of different features like panoramic matrix or whatever that might be. We also have a USB-C port right here on the same flap, which can be used to power the panning motor and the carriage. Personally, I do prefer to use NPF batteries to kind of keep any cables out of the way, and you will need 2 batteries for the setup, one for the carriage and the panning motor and one for the motorized tilt. But NPF batteries are pretty cheap, and I will leave a couple of links down below to these specific batteries that you can charge over USB-C, and they cost next to nothing. The slider has a maximum payload capacity of about 12 kilograms or 22 pounds. And if we decide to mount this vertically, it can handle up to 3.5 kilograms or 7.7 pounds. And as long as we don't run the motors at full speed, they all run super nice and quiet. Most features can be controlled on the front panel, and pairing external gadgets like the tilt head is quick and easy. I also notice an entry here in the menu for follow focus, which I really hope becomes available pretty soon, as this would be absolutely awesome for doing things like focus racks and that kind of stuff. But my favorite way to kind of set up a shot is to press this little button right here with a hand and manually move everything into position, except for the tilt, which has to be controlled on the motor itself or through the app. The smartphone app is pretty basic, but it's available for both iOS and Android, and it allows you to set 6 waypoints instead of just 2, and you can only set 2, by the way, on the control unit. And this little joystick lets you control the speed and the positioning of the tilt and pan, while this joystick on this side gives you control over the positioning of the carriage. And there's a whole bunch of other features here for time lapses and that matrix panorama thingamabot, but you probably know way more about these things than I do, so I will just stick to the video features. The slider is made out of aluminum alloy and carbon fiber, and it feels more robust and more rigid than other sliders that I have in my slider collection. Those have way more flex and way more give compared to the Axis, which feels very sturdy and very robust in comparison. The arms and the motors are all mounted with these easy to grip manual screws, so it's super easy and super quick to assemble and disassemble the slider for transport. But everything isn't great. While you could do a lot of things with a slider, there are some limitations in how you're able to program and control the different motors. One thing you'll probably notice when you start using the slider is how the carriage will do these ramps in and out at each waypoint, even if the only thing you've altered or changed is the position of the pan or maybe the tilt. The easiest way to get around this is to separate the motors and control the pan axis and the carriage on the control panel, while you control and program the tilt axis on the smartphone app. And once you have everything dialed in, you just hit play on both devices simultaneously. It's not perfect, and it would be awesome to have more control over each waypoint, but if you need one of those shots and you want to be able to do everything in camera in just one take, that's the easiest and quickest way to get around those in and out ramps. And my recommendation, whether it's this slider or any other slider, is to always run them at a much lower speed than you anticipate your final footage will have. This will eliminate so many issues, from frame-based judder to shakes and jitters and aligning issues and that sort of stuff, if you just take the time and run your slider slowly. It will also give you a lot more flexibility and control in post, instead of having to go back and reshoot certain shots or try to hide shakes in post. So what's the verdict? Well, the Axis 80 Pro currently sells for about $900 USD, which isn't cheap, but if we were to compare this one with something like the Edelkrone Pan Pro and Slider bundle, or maybe the Rhino Arc V2, it becomes a lot easier to see the great value in a product like the Axis Pro from Zeapon. Especially if you already have your lighting gear and other essential things sorted, and you're just looking for that next piece of kit that can help your work stand out and offer something more unique to your potential clients. You will find more information and links to the different versions down below. Personally, I think the Axis Pro 80 is great, especially if you're working in a smaller studio space like I am. But if you want more reach, you could always check out the 100 and the 120cm versions as well. But that's gonna be it for today. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye!